o'clock. Yep. Is it cool if I'm calling you Alan Oni and Mr. Oni?
Whatever you want.
Hey, everybody. This is Melissa with Love Notes from God, and I'm here today with my brother-in-law, Mr. Oni. He is our rogue middle school teacher, history teacher.
Employed.
So he's the kind of middle school teacher that tries to make things fun and is willing to risk being in trouble. Trying to keep those students awake, right? So you want to tell us just a little bit about yourself, Alan?
Yeah, sure. This is my 18th year of teaching and coaching, all at Sage Valley Middle School, and that's in the Valley View School District. My first 10 years, I taught 7th grade, and these past 8 years, I've been in 8th grade, and I've enjoyed it all, but I've really enjoyed 8th grade by far. It really fits me, and I get into the least amount of trouble. So that's all good times.
Awesome. So, yeah, and Alan's married to my sister, Jolene. Anyway, she's got good taste, as you could tell. But anyway, so tonight we're excited to share with you about None Dare Call It Conspiracy. We're going to read chapter 2. And this was a book that was recommended by our former Secretary of Agriculture for the United States of America. And Ezra Taft Benson, he recommended it when he was the prophet in the 70s. And so I was really surprised by that. And I was like, well, I better see what's in this book if he's going to recommend it during conference. And we got CM Barth in the chat. Hey, he says hi. He says hi, Melissa and Alan. So yeah, welcome to the live stream. Anyway, so last week we're doing this every Friday, by the way, and it's 10 chapters, so that's what I'm planning on doing. We're gonna have various guests on here from time to time. My regular person, Christian, he had some things come up, and so my brother-in-law Alan was in the conversation in the chat a lot last week. So, you know, he's paid his dues to be here.
It's taken years to be on your show.
You finally made it. Bucket list check off. Oh, and then so Christian says, I'm going to listen as I can. Melissa knows I'm about to head to a ministering visit. So, and then we've got my other brother-in-law, Bob, Wild Man Bob Hunter. He says, hi, guys.
How many you have hidden in that beard?
Yeah, let's the beards unite, you know. Bring out the beard power. Yeah. Christian says, hi, Hunter. Life's been, and then Christian says, life has been crazy, but I can listen for a while. Yes, thanks, Christian. And then I just commented, hello, Wild Man Bob. So anyways, let's go ahead and get into this. So socialism is the royal road to power for the super rich. Everyone knows that Adolf Hitler existed. And Alan, go ahead and you interject when you want to say something, okay? No one disputes that terror and destruction that this madman inflicted upon the world are universally recognized. Hitler came from a poor family, which had absolutely no social position. He was a high school dropout, and nobody ever accused him of being cultured. Yet this man tried to conquer the world. During his early career, he sat in a cold garret and poured onto paper his ambitions to rule the world. We know that. Anything you want to say here about Hitler that you know of, Alan?
He's straight crazy, man. You go back to the Great War, aka World War I, because they called the Great War the war to end all wars, which definitely worked, right?
Yeah, right.
So dude was a soldier. He was like in the trenches, man. And he called it, like, afterwards, he survived trench warfare. He survived 4 years of World War I. And he, in his memoirs, his reflections, dude was like, okay, I was gassed, right? That means his lungs were all jacked up.
Oh man.
He referred to it as the greatest time of his life, and he was sad when it ended. So Exhibit A, the dude, like, who would say trench warfare and getting gassed? The greatest time of my life. Great. And then fast forward, he gets arrested because he's trying to overthrow his government, goes to prison, writes a book called Mein Kampf, which you can buy on Amazon. Weird. And writes about, his hatred of Jews and how he wants to overthrow his government and institute this like Aryan order, this perfect Aryan race and things, because that's what sane people think of.
Right. Well, the thing is too is I know that the Aryan race, perfect race, was blonde hair and blue eyes, right?
He wasn't blonde
right?
hair and blue.
Right?
Blame yourself, chamber, bro.
First one in the line. After you, buddy. Well, and then I heard that his grandmother or something was Jewish, I think.
So I'm not the eminent authority when it comes to Hitler. Definitely not. But I can say at least that there are rumors that he was Jewish, or his family members were Jewish, or some of them were. But I can't say with certainty that that's actually a fact. But just rumor. But I could be wrong.
Anybody here that knows, put it in the chat. Let us know if you know. So let's see who else I got here. Okay, so Bob Hunter USA says the beard gives us an unfair advantage for sure.
I don't have a beard. I have a goatee. You have a beard, bro.
He's the goat, right? You're the goat.
Bob, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He's just like a hermit on top of a mountain.
Yeah, you guys are good examples of the Idaho image.
Like AR-15 in my hands right now. So.
Laura the Singh says, I can grow a beard, so borrow. So I can't I can't grow a beard, so I borrow my dog's beard stigma. It works, the ladies dig him. Okay. And a potato. Okay. A man named Vladimir Ilyich Lenin also existed. Like Hitler, Lenin did not spring from a family of social lions. The son of a petty bureaucrat, Lenin, who spent most of his adult life in poverty, has been responsible for the deaths of tens of millions of your fellow human beings and the enslavement of nearly a billion more. Like Hitler, Lenin sat up nights in a dark garret scheming how he could conquer the world. We know that too. And I'm just thinking about that, how they're both in the same situation, trying to figure out how they're going to like rule the world. So when you think about the prison system, and it's supposed to help reform people, right? But they both sat there and planned how to take over the world while they were like in prison, basically.
Well, you have to understand the context of the times, like I just finished up a unit in my 8th grade class about the Industrial Revolution, and it was all about capitalism, obviously, but the overwhelming majority of people had a really rotten time of it. It was horrible. 8 to a room, 42. No rights, no workplace safety features. Like there was everything that we're used to in the world today when it comes to minimum wage and what constitutes full time and overtime, and those things came about because of the Industrial Revolution. But people like Lenin, who followed Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, it really was a bad time for a lot of people. So really, it was just an idea about fairness and equality. And I don't know that Lenin. I guess I don't agree with the author that Lenin was responsible for millions of deaths. It really was his follower, the person who overtook him, who replaced him, Stalin and others, that were responsible for that. Lenin and people before him. It really was, in my opinion, a reaction to the excesses of capitalism in the 1800s, because there were no rules and regulations or unions and those things, and a lot of people were really unhappy. So their ideas to the masses made sense in that time frame in the 1800s.
Well, and I guess I should mention from last week. So the resources that the author had, Gary Allen, was some of like the top tier military, some top tier military that were willing to, what do we call it now? A whistleblower, being whistleblowers about the stuff that's going on. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, but that's the interesting thing is there's so many angles to things that go on. And of course, as we'll see, and as I read in this chapter, a lot of times the person you see isn't the one who's pulling the strings, right? You know,
Mm-hmm.
and so sometimes you're like, yeah, this person is getting blamed, but they were tutored by somebody else, or they were being blackmailed by somebody else to do the things they wanted done. So
It
yeah,
definitely changed time. I think when you get into the 1900s and the Russian Revolution and after that, um, the circumstances change it quite a bit. But when it comes to like the initial like introduction of the ideas of socialism, which was the gateway to communism, that Frederick Engels and Karl Marx put forward, it really was just like, this has got to be better than what we're seeing with capitalism today. But obviously, through time, people have used those ideas like communism, socialism for their own purposes versus for the greater good.
the kind of a soft switch
Uh,
transition.
yeah,
Yeah.
people that got big brains, like I don't have a big brain. They figure out how to take advantage of it and to parlay that into like personal success with power and influence.
Well, all right. So let's see. Is it not theoretically possible that a billionaire could be sitting not in a garret, but in a penthouse in Manhattan, London, or Paris and dream, where are you? Dream the same dream as Lenin and Hitler? You will have to admit, it is theoretically possible Julius Caesar, a wealthy aristocrat, did, and such a man might form an alliance or association with other like minded men, might he not? Caesar did. These men would be superbly educated, command immense social prestige, and be able to pull astonishing amounts of money to carry out their purposes. These are advantages that Hitler and Lenin did not have. It is difficult for the average individual to fathom such perverted lust for power. The typical person of whatever nationality wants only to enjoy success in his job, to be able to afford a reasonably high standard of living, complete with leisure and travel. He wants to provide for his family in sickness and in health, and to give his children a sound education. His ambition stops there. He has no desire to exercise power over others, to conquer other lands or peoples, to be a king. He wants to mind his own business and enjoy life. Since he has no lust for power, it is difficult for him to imagine that there are others who have, others who march to a far different drum. But we must realize that there have been Hitlers and Lenins and Stalins and Caesars and Alexander the Greats throughout history. Why should we assume there are no such men today with perverted lust for power? And if these men happen to be billionaires, is it not possible that they would use men like Hitler and Lenin as pawns to seize power for themselves? Like I was just saying. Let me get this chat real quick here. Let's see. Hunter USA says, I got all my self-defense tools under Democrat administrations. And then Hunter USA says, good conversation, guys. Yeah, thanks, Bob. But and it was interesting because as I was reading this earlier, you might be surprised at what I thought about when it was talking about your ordinary person doesn't want to wield power over somebody else. So my experience that really scared me, I was in like a PTA, parent teachers, like I was on the board for this STEM school and stuff or something like that. And so I was like the director of some activities or something. So like if we were doing something for the teachers and stuff, I was making sure that everything was in line for them to have some treats or whatever. Like this, so I was like the social director or something. Anyways, but I'm sitting here in this meeting and I was not in my position for very long because I have these thoughts come to me of like as the meeting's going on and being like, oh well, that sounds kind of cool. I bet one of my kids would like to do that. I could probably make it so one of my kids gets to have this. And I was like, what? I was like, oh, I'm tempted to like wield some unrighteous dominion, get a little something for myself out of the situation. But I was like, well, no, that's not right. That's not right, and I'm listening in this meeting to other people and I'm like going, wait a minute, we don't have money for that, but we're sponsoring your kid's softball team now. How does that math work? And so I'm just like seeing how people are making deals for themselves. And there were some other things going on too at the time, very politically driven, power driven things. And I just messaged them all like shortly after the meeting was like, hey, knowing the things that I know and feeling the way that I feel, I said it would be dishonest for me to remain in this position. And I just resigned. And
You're braver. Like, man, like, I've been doing this for a long time as a teacher, as a coach, and even at the smallest levels, school board or city council member, like there's power and we're only human, right? I mean, human beings, we like to have influence. We like to be able to take what we feel like is important to us, that we feel like, hey, this is a moral good. And other people may not agree, but I'm going to do these things because I really believe it's for the best of all. And it really gets to a point where it can corrupt you. It can cause you to look the other way, where you ignore things that aren't really good for everybody because you believe you're doing a social good. And I think we're in an age now, especially when it comes to billionaires, the author talks about people with money and influence, whoever they may be. And yeah, I mean, of course they're going to sit there and think, wow, I'm a billionaire and I'm so successful because I'm smart and I have these moral goods and it must be that I'm right. And the masses, me and you, well, you're kind of stupid. And
right.
I'm you. And it makes sense to them, and I think this author is trying to shed light on that's not the case. They're really just corrupted by power and they're not listening to the needs of the people, or in America especially. Like it's hard because we are the most diverse country in the world. There's 180 plus different ethnic groups that are American citizens, and that means you have 180 different ways of doing things and believing in things, and that's hard to manage, but the people with the most money tend to think they have the best ideas, and using government to control us and to impose those ideas seems like it makes sense to them. It's kind of like that whole Thomas Hobbes, John Locke argument from the Age of Enlightenment. Government is there to control our bad impulses. That's Thomas Hobbes. He's like, let's go government. And John Locke is like, no, government's there to protect our rights, and we're all individuals and we have our own belief systems, and that needs to be protected. And I think we're still in that fight right now.
Well, and I know the tables have flipped too, right? Because you used to have to, it took more to be an influencer. But now you get somebody just with the right combination of things. And I mean, I try not to spend my time watching stuff that's just, well, stupid, that's just entertaining too much. But there's some of them where I'm like, let's not watch adults play with toys, right? With the kids, I was like, you guys are not going to watch an adult play with toys. We're not going to have somebody make their living, make an income, and I try to think about different situations and be like, okay, maybe there's a kid who never is going to get to play with something like this, or they have limited ability or whatever. But I'm like, really? Something could be better than this. Teachers could be teaching, right, Alan?
We live, I mean, you go back not too long into the early 1900s, and you didn't have very many distractions when it came to a teacher's impact on their pupils.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, with social media, cell phones, and everything, it's really hard for pupils, even families, parents, to respect the profession and let it do what it's meant to do. Instead, it's kind of combative in a lot of ways, and it's a sign of today's age that like teachers are trying to support parents, and depending on the state you live in, either teachers are trying to indoctrinate your child, or you're a partner with teachers, and it makes a lot of people really feel uncertain about how they see public education or the thinkers of today, and the role of parents in raising their families. It's really confusing at times and can be really hard.
Yeah, and so let's see. Let me get on the chat. We have Laura the Sting says, seems like history is repeating. Yes, itself, definitely. And it says, oh, that PT, and Laura the Sting says, oh, that PTA in school was a disaster of all disasters. Hunter USA says, oh, go ahead, Alan. Oh, you're breaking up, man. I'll wait a second to see if it catches up.
Am I good now?
Yeah, there you are.
The same? Do I have more hair? I was just saying that it's just one of those things where every new generation of young people that move through, the thinkers, the entrepreneurs, whoever they are, they look back on history and they're like, yeah, there's lessons to be learned, but we're going to do things differently, or our way of doing things will be better, even though it looks really like these things in history. And so that's why it keeps repeating itself, is every new generation thinks that their ideas are new or different, and they really call it different things, but it really is just the same thing.
Yeah, like different applications of the same. Yeah, the details are different, but similar things are happening. That's why we need good history, right, Alan? Good history lessons, like the real legit stuff.
Honest history, like ideally honest history.
Yes, amen. Let's see. Hunter USA says the lust for power is definitely a problem. The founding fathers understood this well, hence separation of powers. I agree that any system taken to its extreme becomes dangerous, not just communism. And hello, whoever's joining us new. Hunter says, why would I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? The Patriot. That's from the Patriot. Okay. Lord of the Sting says, well, if everyone just did everything my way and the way I want things done, the world would just be so much better. I say that at work all the time. Things would just be fixed. Hunter says, Rome had the same problem. Being rich isn't a bad thing, but being able to use that wealth to buy Congress silences others in the Republic. Not sure how to fix that because those benefiting from it, he must have ran out of words. Okay. The most are the ones with the power to make new laws. Yep. Yeah, then from Love Notes from God shouldn't be the other way around, the parents supporting the teachers and taking responsibility for their kids' educations. Yeah, supporting the teachers. Yep. Yep. And that's the hard thing is too, I mean, the breaking down of the family, which we'll talk about in here, definitely affects education, you know, being able to have that support because there are so many more youth that they don't have it. They don't have the support, you know. And I think that's what more teachers and, you know, like schools have to understand too is it's like the education like it stops once they leave the door sometimes because they're some kids are in very unreasonable situations, you know. So
I think sometimes, looking over my past 18 years, it's all been in middle school. Yeah, I just kind of, I come from just a really dysfunctional background, and because of the dysfunction of the family experience I went through, I felt that was licensed to um, be dysfunctional myself in school and socially. And so I had to really learn the hard way. So I tend to gravitate towards those kids that are more edgy or have attitude or cause problems at school because I see myself in them and I want to create that relationship with them and um, help them just have a better experience with school. But it really is a partnership. I'm not here teachers aren't here to replace parents. Learning really begins in the home. And my job, like I'm a history teacher, so I teach them about history and their stories, the amazing stories of history. There's some crazy, it's so fun.
I know when you get like there's so many great stories in history. It's too bad that you don't get to teach whatever you would want to, right? Because I mean, if they're like, okay, you get 5 minutes to teach something wild, but not too wild. I mean, there's a lot. And I gotta say hello, Jessica from Christ Pearl is my friend that just popped in the chat. Hey, thanks for coming.
Find your angles as a teacher, I mean, like if I get into, so we're going to get into the Great War here, World War I here, beginning on Tuesday, and eventually I'll go through the Russian Revolution, but then I'm going to sit them down for it or like a good 20 minutes and tell them the actual true story of Rasputin, and the myths around him, and then what actually happened to him in the end, and it it's quite eye-opening for kids. Like, wait, they did that, like to him. That's a thing now, even today, and yeah, it is. And so it provides you a lot of opportunities to tell the stories of history, or at least as reported by the people who lived during that time, and not get caught up in politics or ideology, because I mean that shouldn't be a part of the classroom, that can come from family or friends, and that's like how they believe about things is not up to me as a history teacher. I just tell the story, and
Yeah.
here's what they happened, here's what's recorded, and you don't include your opinion in that.
Yeah. All right, we're going to hop back into this. Indeed, difficult as this is to believe, such is the case. Like Columbus, we are faced with the task of convincing you that the world is not flat, as you have been led to believe all your life, but instead is round. We are going to present evidence that what you call communism is not run from Moscow or Peking, but is an arm of a bigger conspiracy run from New York, London, and Paris. The men at the apex of this movement are not communists in the traditional sense of that term. They feel no loyalty to Moscow or Peking. They are loyal only to themselves and their undertaking. And these men certainly do not believe in the claptrap pseudo philosophy of communism. They have no intention of dividing their wealth. Socialism is a philosophy which conspirators exploit, but in which only the naive believe. Just how finance capitalism is used as the anvil and communism is the hammer to conquer the world will be explained in this book, which we kind of already addressed some of those things too. The concept that communism is but an arm of a larger conspiracy has become increasingly apparent throughout the author's journalistic investigations. He has had the opportunity to interview privately 4 retired officers who spent their careers high in military intelligence. Much of what the author knows he learned from them, and the story is known to several thousand others. High military intelligence circles are well aware of this network. In addition, the author has interviewed 6 men who have spent considerable time as investigators for congressional committees. In 1953, one of these men, Norman Dodd, headed the Reese Committee's investigation of tax-free foundations. Tax-free foundations? Wait a minute. I'm thinking of the fraud happening right now, right? When Mr. Dodd began delving into the role of international high finance in the world revolutionary movement, the investigation was killed on orders from the Eisenhower-occupied White House. Nothing to see here, guys. Nothing suspicious. According to Mr. Dodd, it is permissible to investigate the radical bomb throwers in the streets. But when you begin to trace their activities, wait a second. Are you sure this is then and not now? Back to their origins. In the legitimate world, the political iron curtain slams down. Nothing to see here, kids. Everything is fine. Just keep walking along.
Yeah, very typical of whatever time that you live in. I can't say that I mean, I don't know who the sources are or whatever. I mean, you have to consider the context of the author of when he's writing. You're talking about the Cold War, and the 50s and 60s and 70s, which is when he's writing about. That was definitely very much like communism bad. And America, NATO good, Warsaw Pact bad, and so I don't mean to like belittle who he's talking to or the point he's trying to make, because obviously we can draw a through line, right, parallels to 2026, and so at the very least, like, he makes you wonder and confront the parallels that are out there between then, which was a very black and white: communism, Warsaw Pact, NATO, America, one good, one not, like, bad. But now it really, you don't have that dynamic. It's very muddled. It's very murky, and you have to do a lot more work to see what's happening, right? Because the people today aren't going to say, like, I'm all for communism. They might not even care, as the author said. It's more like the ideas using vernacular that you would find in the Communist Manifesto, while not really thinking about, I'm promoting words from the Communist Manifesto. They just have these ideals, and they're using the verbiage, and they're going to push that.
Yep. Let's see. You can believe anything you want about communism, except that it is a conspiracy run by men from the respectable world. People will often say to an active anti-communist, I can understand your concern with communism, but the idea that a communist conspiracy is making great inroads in the United States is absurd. The American people are anti-communist. They're not about to buy communism. It's understandable to be concerned about communism in Africa or Asia or South America with their tremendous poverty, ignorance, and disease, but to be concerned about communism in the United States, where the vast majority of people have no sympathy with it whatsoever, is a misspent concern. On the face of it, that is a very logical and plausible argument. The American people are indeed anti-communist. Suppose you were to lay this book down right now, pick up a clipboard, and head for the nearest shopping center to conduct a survey on Americans' attitudes about communism. Sir, you say the first prospect you encounter, we would like to know if you are for or against communism. Most people would probably think you are putting them on. If we stick to our survey, we would find that 99% of the people are anti-communist. We probably would be hard put to find anybody who would take an affirmative stand for communism. So on the surface, it appears that the charges made against anti-communists concerned with the internal threat of communism are valid. The American people are not pro-communist, but before our imaginary interview, we walks away in disgust with what he believes is a hokey survey. You add, sir, before you leave, there are a couple of other questions I would like to ask. You won't find these quite so insulting or ludicrous. Your next question is, what is communism? Will you define it, please? Immediately, a whole new situation has developed. Rather than the near uh, unanimity previously found, we now have an incredible diversity of ideas. There are a multitude of opinions on what communism is. Some will say, oh, yes, communism, well, that's a tyrannical brand of socialism. Others will maintain communism, as it was originally intended by Karl Marx, was a good idea, but it has never been practiced, and the Russians have loused it up. A more erudite type might proclaim communism is simply a rebirth of Russian imperialism. You have anything to say about that, history teacher?
Yeah, a lot of people don't really know what it is. We just got done with our little mini unit called Comparing the Isms in my 8th grade class, Socialism and Capitalism. And there are still students at the end of an entire week of learning about the differences that still think like unlimited opportunity for private property ownership and owning businesses and owning land is communism. They still flip communism with capitalism. Like, bro, we just spent days on this. How the flip do you not know? But that's the exception to the norm. But yeah, people like have like their initial impulse is like, no, communism is bad. That's bad. That's bad. It's bad, right? Okay.
Right.
What is it? It's like, oh yeah, government and bad things, and it makes you sad. What exactly do they do? So it's a fair point. Like, yeah, most people are going to be like, no, man, like communism bad. We don't want that for America. We're all about capitalism. Yeah, well, what is it? What's communism? What's capitalism?
Mr. Oni's like so beside himself, he just split his beard in two. I just know.
Because I can't say that teachers are failing kids. I tried my best with this unit, and there's still a few people that can't flip and get it. They still think communism is like, oh yeah, free market and unlimited private property ownership. Like, what did you do the past 4 days? Were you thinking about your boyfriend? Like, what happened? So, I mean, I can't blame teachers, because most people try to be fair and honest about what it actually is, at the end of the day, like a lot of the ideas seem pretty attractive. No social classes, so no rich, no poor. Everybody has what they need. You get a job. Wow, that sounds pretty legit.
Right.
Like I was growing up, I was super poor. We had no phone. We had no TV. We didn't have a car. We were on welfare the whole time. And even when I got married to your sister, we were that typical poor college students, so those times were still rough. And so the idea of not having to struggle through and work my way up was pretty attractive. Well, I'm 46 now. And me and my wife's combined income places us up in the just barely inside the upper class, which is just an economics class, right? It's not about best people, okay people, not so good people. It's just how much money your family makes. And you want me to give that up? Like, we busted our butt for that. So no, thank you. But it's all education in the end, and education or freedom comes from an educated mind. The more people understand what people are talking about, the more they understand what's BS and what's legit.
Well, and Hunter USA says, love it. Teach them how to think, not what to think. Good job, teacher.
But we're talking about 8th graders.
And love notes from God. It says, these are not the politicians you're looking for. Star Wars-esque. And Hunter USA says, pleased to meet you. Hope you guessed my name. Rolling Stones sympathy for the devil.
Cover that song when we get into the protest era of Vietnam.
Lord Singh says it's the collective syndrome that the entire middle school operates on a single brain cell, so it gets overwhelmed sometimes.
Come spend a day with me, and then you'll really grasp that.
Yeah. Well, we got 3 middle schoolers in our house right now, so we're seeing it pretty good.
I'm really grateful that my oldest just got done with college and getting done with 8th grade, so they're ready. Rachel's a senior at high school, so like enjoy the 6th grade mentality.
Times 2.
For and 6th graders, I'll coach them. I'm not going to teach them.
All right, let's see. Let's see. Oh, I got to get back to where is it? Let's see. Oh, all right. All right. If perchance one of the men you asked to define communism happened to be a political science professor from the local college, he might well reply, you can't ask what is communism. That is a totally simplistic question about an extremely complex situation. Communism today, quite unlike the view held by the right-wing extremists in America, is not an international monolithic movement. Rather, it is a polycentric, fragmented nationalistic movement deriving its character through the charismas of its various national leaders, while of course there is the welding of Hegelian dialectics with Feuerbachkian materialism held in common by the communist parties generally. It is a monumental oversimplification to ask, what is communism? Instead, you should ask, what is the communism of Mao Zedong? Mao Zedong. I'm not saying it right. Mao Zedong?
Mao Zedong.
Okay. What is the communism of the late Ho Chi Minh or Fidel Castro or Marshal Tito? I could make you laugh.
Like,
I just butcher them.
Marshall.
My ears have been assaulted. If you think we are being facetious here, you haven't talked to a political science professor lately, for the above is the prevailing view on our campuses, not to mention in our State Department, which of course my husband works for the state, so it's pretty funny things these days at our house. All right, let's see. Whether you agree or disagree with any of these definitions, or as may well be the case, you have one of your own. One thing is undeniable. No appreciable segment of the anti-communist American public can agree on just what it is that they are against. Isn't that frightening? Here we have something that almost everybody agrees is bad, like you said, but we cannot agree on just what it is we are against. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It depends a lot on just our family background. You know, you look at immigrants that come from Cuba or Venezuela, and so what are they leaving? Well, Cuba has been a very authoritarian communist country for a long time. So there are many Cuban Cubans in Florida, and many of them are Cuban Americans. And like Pitbull, very popular singer, is very anti-communist because of his family's experience in Cuba, and so he's very, very pro-America because he understands what that actually looks like when you live in a country that espouses to those ideals. Um, Granted, it's not what Karl Marx and Frederick Engels says it should be. It's how the imperfect people that try to apply that, who have power, have abused it to make it this ugly thing. You know, because ideas, it doesn't seem that ugly, but when it's in practice, it's very ugly. And so people flee, they run away because it's terrible. Venezuela used to be this really powerful, rich oil oil-based country as far as exports, and then when it changed to a dictatorship and they moved towards socialism, communism, it all turned to crap. It became a really horrible existence for a lot of people, and many people fled. So they have the perception that, wow, that's really negative. And we had a horrible time. So we're glad to be in America. But people that are born and bred Americans that have never lived somewhere else, they get caught up. And I'm not gonna belittle them because I have family members that feel this way. So I'm not gonna do that. But they get really hyper focused on the things that are happening in our country, and they get emotionally attached to it, and they look at these other ideas and they're like, that has to be a better way. That's better than what we're experiencing here. And they don't have a frame of reference that many immigrants have coming from countries that are much less free or opportunistic or than ours. And so I would say look to the immigrants because they definitely have a frame of reference, and American citizens, people born and raised here, really don't have that frame of reference. And so they tend to push for ideas that have been proven to not work. But
Yeah.
what can you say? Like, you know, I mean, how do you know? You don't know. You're reading about it in a textbook, or you're learning about it from a college professor, versus a person just from Cuba or Venezuela or wherever, or somewhere in Eastern Europe, and they can tell you what it's really like. Because I've taught and taught as students and known as parents from, and that also taught at Sage Valley that are from those, and they came here for a reason. It has nothing to do with communism, socialism, and the people that are born and raised, fortunately, don't have that frame of reference, and they get caught up in ideals.
Yeah, and well, of course, your mom's from Austria.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, yeah, and she was. I mean, it was the Austria and West Germany after the Marshall Plan, when we went out of our way, the Western world, to rebuild versus punish. You know, so she was raised in an era of improvement and capitalism and increased freedoms versus what her parents went through. My Oma and my Opa, when my Opa, for those people who don't know, he served in the German army in World War II, and he was drafted into it to fight in the Russian front. They definitely saw, you know, dictatorship and a lot of abuses of freedoms and natural rights. And luckily, my mom was able to be raised in a part of a time in Europe where they were focusing on freedoms and natural rights, and kind of rebuilding that among the people that didn't get to experience that during the times of World War II.
Well, let me read here. Hello to those who just joined the live stream. Welcome. And I'm going to read a bit of the comments here. Let's see. So Hunter USA says Soviet Premier Nikita. Khrushchev. Yeah, good job, Alan. I was going to butcher that some more. And then he says the quote took several parts. And Love Notes from God says, too many big and fancy words for Friday night. That's my other part. My husband, he's doing the chatting. So in the chat. Hunter USA says, you're doing great, Melissa. These are very big and complicated topics. Thank you. Good thing I'm not a teacher. I would be making the students laugh. They wouldn't know. I think you were hitting around assimilation, Alan. Yes, how can people who have never participated in a democratic republic know how to participate in it? It's our obligation to help them understand. Yeah, help the nice way. And then he also says our system and our history, where our Bill of Rights came from and the sacrifices made even prior to the US founding back to the Magna Carta and English Bill of Rights. And he says very important for the continuation of our culture. Well,
Yeah,
of course, go ahead.
Harder.
Well, and of course, Hunter USA served in the military and has been in Afghanistan. And I, very naively was like, "Oh, what's fishing like there?" And he's like, "You're gonna get shot." And I'm like, "Oh,
Are
because
you really fishing like there?
huh?"
You really asked like Bob what they
Yeah.
said?
Yeah, I was like, "I wonder what fishing is like there." And he's like, "You're gonna get shot." But that's not our reality. We're like, I want to work at a place where I get sick pay and I get, I have vacation time, right?
Bombast. Like, what's that? Wow. I would love to see Bob look when you ask him that question. Yeah, what's it like fishing in, Afghanistan?
Yep, he was just. I was like, I wonder, and he's like, "Whoa, what?" All right, let's see. How would this work in a football game, for example? Of course, we just had the Super Bowl. This right now, this is February 2026, by the way. Happy Valentine's Day tomorrow, everybody. What a great time to have this conversation, right? But anyways, all right. So, okay. For example, can you imagine how effective the defense of a football team would be if the front four could not agree with the linebackers, who could not agree with the cornerbacks, who could not agree with the safety men, who could not agree with the assistant coaches, who could not agree with the head coach as to what kind of defense they should put up against the offense being presented? The obvious result would be chaos. You could take a sandlot team and successfully pit them against the Green Bay Packers if the Packers couldn't agree on what it is they are opposing. That is academic, the first principle in any encounter, whether it be football or war, hot or cold, is know your enemy. The American people do not know their enemy. Consequently, it is not strange at all that for 3 decades, we have been watching one country of the world after another fall behind the communist curtain. In keeping with the fact that almost everybody seems to have his own definition of communism, we are going to give you ours, and then we will attempt to prove to you that it is the only valid one. Communism, an international conspiratorial drive for power on the part of men in high places willing to use any means to bring about their desired aim, global conquest. What do you think, teachers? Bob and Alan?
Gosh, I don't know that I agree with the conspiracy part of it. Like you've got. I understand he's writing it in the context of the Cold War, but so I have to balance that with just contemporary times. Do I think there's a group of people that are elite and rich that think they know better as far as how to run the world? Well, yeah, just watch any World Economic Forum symposium, and they talk about how, you're going to have less and be happy to have less. They stay billionaires. I don't know that they're looking at it through the lens of like communism. We're going to keep it going our own way versus the Karl Marx ways. I just don't know that I buy it. It's that um, um, unified or
Black and white?
collaborative.
Oh,
I don't think it's that black and white. I think it's more the power, the mindset of just having power and influence, and we have money and we know what's best versus we know what's best because it's communism or something like that.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's see what Bob says. All right. He says, well, I suppose the fishing. Bob says, I suppose the fishing could be a blast. And Bob says, I'm a history teacher too. Love this stuff. I'm waiting for what he thinks about that communism description there. Okay, you will notice. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, give it to us, Bob. What do you think?
Teach us, teach. All right. You will notice that we did not mention Marx, Engels, Lenin, Trotsky, Borges, proletariat, or dialectical materialism. We said nothing of the pseudo-economics or political philosophy of the communists. These are the techniques of communism and should not be confused with the communist conspiracy itself. We did call it an international conspiratorial drive for power. Unless we understand the conspiratorial nature of communism, we don't understand it at all. We will be eternally fixated at the Gus Hall level of communism, and that's not what it's at, baby. And Hunter USA says, if you go back and read the quote from the Russian premier, it really speaks to how they think in terms of centuries and Americans think in years or maybe a decade. Let's see.
Yeah, I just don't buy, like, he keeps linking communism.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're not talking about Marx or Trotsky or Engels or whatever. Like, okay, great. I mean, but like, I haven't heard anything that makes me think that the conspiracy is based on communism, versus just the intent to control the minds of the masses because you know best, because you're in positions of power. I guess you could link that to communism or whatever, but it seems a reach to me because, like, Marx and Engels and those people and Lenin, that was a reaction to the horrible excesses and just the bad times of capitalism and the Industrial Revolution. And to the basic, the masses of the people that were going for capitalism, that seemed pretty cool and legit. Now we've learned, right, like how that actually looks. So I don't know. I'm struggling with that part, that the continued link to, like, well, now it's still communism, but it looks different. But you have to know it's communism. And I'm not really seeing the connection between what communism was meant to be and what the author thinks is examples of communism today. But I understand the concern about just controlling the masses, and the elites are the best position to control us because that's what it was then. And they punish the masses who didn't go along with their ideas. So I guess that could be connection. I mean, it's complicated, I guess, but.
Well, I think the hard thing is there's so many different, like, secret kind of combinations that we see that you can only see part of it. We don't ever all see everything that's going on. And so I think you're going like, man, it's kind of hard to put an exact label on some of this stuff because that's kind of pretending like you know what's going on.
Not that person. I'm not big brain enough to even grasp it. Like,
and welcome to those that have joined the stream. We got a few more in here, and I'm with my brother-in-law Alan here. We're going over the chapter 2, None Dare Call It Conspiracy. He's our rogue middle school history teacher.
Rogue. 16 years ago. I'm pretty much a square now, you know. Like,
as much as you can be with that, with your majestic goatee, right? You say it's a goatee.
yeah, it's all smoke and mirror.
All right, let's see here. All right. Um, where am I at again? All right. We know that down through the annals of history, small groups of men have existed who have conspired to bring the reins of power into their hands. History books are full of their schemes. Even Life magazine believes in conspiracies like the Cosa Nostra, where men conspire to make money through crime. You may recall that Life did a series of articles on the testimony of Joseph Valachi before the McClellan Committee several years ago. There are some aspects of those revelations which are worth noting. Most of us did not know the organization was called Cosa Nostra until Valachi saying, "We all thought it was named the Mafia." That is how little we know about this group, despite the fact that it was a century old and had been operating in many countries with a self perpetuating clique of leaders. We didn't even know it by its proper name. Possible it is not possible a political conspiracy might exist. Waiting for Joseph Valachi to testify? Is Dr. Carol Quigley the Joseph Valachi of political conspiracies? We see that everybody, even Life magazine, believes in some sort of conspiracy. The question is, which is a more lethal form of conspiracy, criminal or political? And what is the difference between a member of the Cosa Nostra and the communist, or more properly, an insider conspirator? Men like Lucky Luciano, who have scratched and clawed to the top of the heap in organized crime must, of necessity, be diabolically brilliant, cunning, and absolutely ruthless. But almost without exception, the men in the hierarchy of organized crime have had no formal education. They were born into poverty and learned their trade in the back alleys of Naples, New York, or Chicago. Now suppose someone with this same immoral, grasping personality were born into a patrician family of great wealth and was educated at the best prep schools, then Harvard, Yale, or Princeton, followed by graduate work, possibly at Oxford. In these institutions, he would become totally familiar with history, economics, psychology, sociology, and political science. After having graduated from such illustrious establishments of higher learning, are we likely to find him out on the streets peddling 50-cent tickets to a numbers game? Would you find him pushing marijuana to high schoolers or running a string of houses of prostitution? Would he be getting involved in gangland killings? Not at all. For with that sort of education, this person would realize that if one wants power, real power, the lesson of history say, get into the government business, become a politician and work for political power, or better yet, get some politicians in front for you. That is where the real power and the real money is. Well, I think a lot of us have seen too that when you sit there and you look at things and people, you have a politician that says something or somebody up in power, and then they say something else that kind of contradicts what they were doing. You sit there and you go like, okay, something's not right about this. Like, it feels weird that they're so, okay, we'll just talk about the shot, getting the shot for COVID. There were some people that were like, oh no, you shouldn't get that. And then I feel like as they got their financial interests in order, then all of a sudden it was like, yeah, you should all get this multiple times. And I'm like, how do some of you have you not forgotten that when the shot first came out, these people were all against it and now they're all for it? You know.
There's a lot of politics involved. Like
Oh
when you
yeah.
remember when President Trump came up with Operation Warp Speed, right?
Yeah.
Nancy Pelosi's of the world saying, I wouldn't trust a vaccine from the Trump administration. as it got towards the end of his administration and on to the Biden administration, then it changed to if you get the shot, you won't get COVID, and therefore you can't pass it on. And people who won't get it, they are the causes of the epidemic, right? It's the plague of the unvaccinated,
Right.
and that, and you realize, like, the original studies from the Moderna and these pharmacy companies, like, were right that you could get the shot and it would, depending on your risk group, like, help you with your symptoms, but it would never stop you from getting it or spreading it, which is what it was in the original during Operation Warp Speed. It really just depends on the people who are trying to get power and the messaging they want to have, and you saw it in my school, there were teachers that were mistreating each other because they were caught up on what CNN or MSNBC or Fox News was saying, and therefore they treated each other accordingly versus just educating themselves. Politicians, people that have that education, the Oxford education, they're really smart, and they know how to use fear and anger, gain influence and power, and to keep you in line.
Well, and I haven't really brought up too much of, like, religion that much in this one. But the important part of it is I was like, Satan was having, like, he was delighted. He was absolutely delighted during that time watching, because as I say, like, what's one of the best ways to like win a war is if you can get your adversary to, like, tear themselves apart.
Yeah.
You don't have to fire a single shot because you're just creating the environment for them to destroy themselves, and you can just sit back and watch. And that can last for generations as well, not for just a few minutes. So
If he can get a third of the host of heaven in the presence of Heavenly Father,
oh, right. Yeah, right.
to turn their back on him in his presence, he's pretty freaking good. He knows how to convince you that up is down and down is up and right is wrong and wrong is right. If he can do that in the presence of Heavenly Father, he can do that here on earth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, it's just, yeah, scratch your head, right? All right, let's
I have just coincided with what we're talking about.
yeah. You were just inspiring it, hitting it home. Thanks, Alan. Let's see. Oh yeah, so Hunter USA says gave us centralized planning at its core is the removal of an individual's free will. Jesus wants us to come by our own free will, not by the crushing if free will. The difference between our savior and the enemy. But yeah, we need to choose. Jesus Christ was about letting people make those decisions and not making them
Yeah.
do things when he could have wielded that sword.
Right. He'll teach you and he'll give you the, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do with it? Right. Are you going to listen to the masses shouting in your ear that he's wrong and you need to listen to the world? Okay, you can make that choice and see what happens. Or you can make the harder decision and listen to his teachings and ignore the people yelling at you or putting you down, and they'll fade away. And you will get the rewards that Heavenly Father and Christ have promised you if you can persevere and overcome the world. And that's a hard thing, whether it's COVID or anything else. Like, the people who are angry and want to shout you down and make you feel like you're a bad person, when you feel like you've tried to educate yourself and listen to or learn about what's right and good, that's a really hard thing, and it's really easy to listen to that negative language, because if everybody else is negative around you or saying these things which aren't good, but they're all saying it, like, how are you going to resist that? And that's what Satan's counting on. He knows it's hard, and he's counting on your imperfect human nature to not listen to Heavenly Father and to go with him.
Well, to me, that's where, like when people are like, oh, if you got to win, then sometimes you're wrong, you know, because it's like, well, like a lot of times I come down to like, what's your purpose? What's your intent? You know, and to me, I'm like, it doesn't matter what you chose during that time if you did it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
If you got a shot, if you wore a mask, no matter what you did, if you did it for the wrong reasons, it wasn't right, And I know people on both sides of things and stuff that, it's that spirit within you of the purpose and your intent of what you're doing. A person, that is supported by God and their righteous choices is going to be happy and be successful, even as crappy as things can look, because they're a person on a mission. But
Yeah.
if you're, so I mean, teachers, right? If you're there for good reasons and you care about the kids, like crap can happen and stuff, but you're trying to do what you can do. But if you're just like, I need money, like it's gonna be a long time. Because the money's not the best anyways. Not always.
Right. And I mean, like me and the wife, we've watched a couple of Angel Studios movies about German youth or
Mm-hmm.
LDS missionaries in Germany during World War II, and how hard it was for them to stay the course and choose the right with all this pressure on them to toe the line. And many of them were able to still make the right choices, even through incredibly difficult, mind-numbing experiences that cause any of us to want to just throw in the towel, And I think that's what the world is very much like today. You're going to have a lot of people that you follow or that consider important, and then they're going to start saying things that seem at odds with your belief system, but shoot, they've got a million followers, or they're a
Right.
political, or they sure can dunk a basketball or whatever, and you're supposed to follow them or something because they're more powerful, influential than you are. So versus them, right?
Well, and that's kind of the scary thing once they have the thing, followers, like followers, that's cool. That's kind of creepy, actually.
I'm
Followers. Oh.
123 subscribers on my YouTube channel, and like it changed the world.
Yeah, you never know, Yeah, as we've seen, we can get a few like screwball situations happening, and there can be disaster. So, it's important for people to realize that your voice matters and what you choose to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it might seem like you don't have that much of an influence, but if you influence the wrong person, right, things can go south pretty quick.
Yeah.
Because maybe you're not willing to go down and like cut down all the trees of the world, but somebody else has no problem. They got no qualms. There's nothing to slow them down on what they're doing. Just watch the debris flying. You
just
so
gotta get emotional about right and wrong and count on them being like ignorant. That doesn't mean stupid. That just means not knowing or not really educated on something. And you can get those people to do anything for you if you can take what they don't know and use it against them emotionally and get them upset about something. You can talk about climate change, you can talk about COVID, social justice issues, or whatever, and all those things are important in and by themselves. But when you use it to cause a person to feel fearful or angry versus empowered, educated, then it can be used for wrong.
weaponized.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah. Scary, amazing, and terrifying. Yeah. Conspiracy to seize the power of government is as old as government itself. We can study the conspiracies surrounding. Okay. Uh, Alcibiades. Alcibiades. How was that?
I need to turn on Google Translate. What was that?
Alcibiades in Greece. Alcibiades
We're both in the same boat. Keep going.
in Greece or Julius Caesar in ancient Rome. But we are not supposed to think that men today scheme to achieve political power. Every conspirator has two things in common with every other conspirator. He must be an accomplished liar and a far-seeing planner. Whether you are studying Hitler, Alcibiades, Julius Caesar, or some of our contemporary conspirators, you will find that their patient planning is almost overwhelming. We repeat FDR's statement: in politics, nothing happens by accident. If it happens, you can bet it was planned that way. In reality, communism is a tyranny planned by power seekers whose most effective weapon is the big lie. And if one takes all the lies of communism and boils them down, you will find they distill into two major lies out of which all others spring. They are: communism is inevitable, and communism is a movement of the downtrodden masses rising up against exploiting bosses. Let us go back to our imaginary survey and analyze our first big lie of communism, that it is inevitable. You will recall that we asked our interviewee if he was for or against communism, and then we asked him to define it. Now we are going to ask him: sir, do you think communism is inevitable in America? And in almost every case, the response will be something like this: oh, well, no, I don't think so. You know how Americans are. We are a little slow sometimes in reacting to danger. You remember Pearl Harbor, but the American people would never sit still for communism. Next, we ask, well, then, do you think socialism is inevitable in America? The answer in almost every case will be similar to this: I'm no socialist, you understand, but I see what is going on in this country. Yeah, I'd have to say that socialism is inevitable. Then we ask our interviewee, since you say you are not a socialist, but you feel the country is being socialized, why don't you do something about it? His response will rim: I'm only one person. Besides, it's inevitable. You can't fight City Hall. Heh heh heh. Don't you know the boys down at City Hall are doing everything they can to convince you of that? How effectively can you oppose anything if you feel your opposition is futile? Giving your opponent the idea that defending himself is futile is as old as warfare itself. In about 500 BC, the Chinese warlord philosopher Sun Tzu stated, supreme excellence in warfare lies in the destruction of your enemy's will to resist, in advance of perceptible hostilities. We call it psy-war, or psychological warfare today. In poker, it is called running a good bluff. The principle is the same. Thus, we have the American people anti-communist, but unable to define it, and anti-socialist, but thinking it is inevitable. How did Marx view communism? How important is the inevitability of communism to the communists? What do the communists want you to believe is inevitable, communism or socialism? If you study Marx's Communist Manifesto, you will find that in essence, Marx said the proletarian revolution would establish the socialist dictatorship of the proletariat. To achieve the socialist dictatorship of the proletariat, three things would have to be accomplished: the elimination of all right to private property, which you kind of brought up, this dissolution of the family unit, and destruction of what Marx referred to as the opiate of the people, which is religion. Opiate of the people, religion. What do y'all got to say about that?
Yeah, that was a lot. That was like some, like when you're sitting down there and you're eating a plate of meat potatoes, and you got the steak and you got the potatoes, and 6 bites later you're like, oh gosh, I'm full. I human beings, like wherever you're at, like we want to live well, we want to be okay, we want to be able to support our family. I want my neighbors to be okay. I want to look after my neighbors. If there's a need in my community, whatever it may be, I want to see what I can to help with that, you know. And so I think all human beings in this world are like that, you know, to one degree or another. I don't know if I want to subscribe to like the language of, oh, that makes you like socialist or communist or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like true communism, like I think it gets to that point later in the book, like there's no government. So how do you get there?
Yeah.
Socialism,
Right.
the gateway drug. It's like when you're like, oh, the meth and fentanyl and heroin. Well, what are some gateway drugs? Marijuana, among others, you know, and then
Mm-hmm.
you experiment with other drugs in those things. So it's a process. But at the end of it all, whether you're in Poland or Russia or China or America, like people are people, and they wanna be happy, and they want to help their neighbors, you know. And each country has their different way of doing things. Like even Russia and China, that used to be full-blown communist, they're communist in the sense of how they govern. Like they're really restrictive on your individual liberties and freedoms, but they like money too. So they choose an economic system called capitalism. And now they're making bank while governing in a very communist authoritarian way, you know. Even in America, like we say, oh, wait, we don't like socialism or communism, blah, 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 blah. Okay, what are some common good programs that we do? Because we know it's just a good thing to do. Unemployment, welfare, Medicare, Medicaid, taking care of people, even in capitalist countries that are very focused on like democratic Republican forms of government. We want to take care of each other, you know, and do what we can. How do we do that best? We make as much money as we can, you know, so that we can do these socialized types of programs to take care of the people who are struggling. It doesn't mean you're socialist or communist or whatever, you know. And there's a reason why most of the world is very capitalist today, is because the ones that really try communism and socialism end up causing a lot of suffering and destruction. And go figure, people don't like that.
What?
My kids streets falling around a cow trying to eat that cow's waste because they're hungry. Yeah.
And we can
No.
all just eat bugs, right? Let's see. Hunter USA says COVID was a good lesson and reminder of the importance of personal sovereignty and individuals' rights. I'm not sure everyone got that though. It was a very dangerous test, but the test to come will be much harder. Put your armor on. He says fifth generation warfare. In other words, the communists can't allow religion because the state has all the power with God. He says a strong nuclear family structure is also challenges the power of the state, hence the name to destroy the nuclear family. You know, I had never thought of the phrase nuclear family. Nuclear, that's power, right? Nuclear family, you know? Boom.
It's Earth. So that makes sense. You would call it the nuclear family, you know. And
it's really interesting. I hadn't thought about that. Had you thought about nuclear family? Like,
oh, so that's very big brain, very original. I like that.
You got less nukes than me, though. I got 7. You got like half that many. I got more nukes.
Then you're a nuke, so assured destruction.
But it's interesting though. One of the things, so with love notes from God, I'm like, God tries to teach us and speak to us like every day through like different situations if we are like showing up to learn. And so the mice with the chicken food and stuff, I was like, okay, man, I got to outsmart them, and I'm like trying different strategies, and I was like, you know what? They're a family, and they're strong. You know, even though they're small, they have drive, they have support, and they are willing to do what it takes to get the job done. You know, like they're just super resourceful. And I just think like too often I get really frustrated when people are like, oh, stupid bees, oh, stupid animals. I'm like, you know what? God put them there to teach us some things. And if you are like, you know, you think you got this big brain, as you've used before, you know, it's like, look at the little people. These little ones, they can teach you a lot. You know, even like kids. I mean, I'm sure you've had times with students and stuff, you know, middle school, where you're like, whoa, dude, what was that? That was deep. What? You know, or you just like, I never thought about it that way before. And you go like, wow, this the teacher has become the student, you know, whatever. Yes, thank you, Sensei. But I mean, that's the thing is, I think the biggest thing is it's like you have to be like, am I teachable? You know, and too often people, I'm like, that's when the learning stops, when you're not teachable anymore. If you're a teachable person, it's like that doesn't mean you're learning stuff. I mean, we're listening, going through this book and stuff, and there's some things you're like, yeah, I don't know if I really agree with how that is. Like I said, it is very a bit, like I said, Star Wars, Sith, and Jedi. You know, things
Yeah.
aren't that black and white and plain, but I mean, we have so many avenues right now. So when they talk about like AI is amazing and terrifying. And now I'm sitting there during COVID and I found this commercial. I got to share it. I'm not going to right now, but I'm going to share another video. There's this little boy and they're like, hey, Charlie, come meet your new friend. That sounds creepy anyways, right? And it's like this little robot. And I was like, what the heck is going on here, you know? And he's like talking to him and stuff. And he looks all cute and stuff, right? But I'm like, okay. I'm like, what the heck? Why would I use this? But I'm like, you know what? If you had a kid who was sick, who like, and like you couldn't have more kids or whatever, and this kid couldn't like go out and do stuff with other people, but I'm like, but still as a parent, like be involved with your kid, right? But I was going like, this is so creepy. And then you've probably seen it, these little, and in the chat, if you have seen some of this amazing or crazy AI, please share with us. You know, we're talking about socialism and communism. We're talking about the nuclear family and those things being torn apart and how we're seeing this stuff happen. It's like so real. Anyways, you know, you have relationships with animals, with pets, right? So the thing is with God, if you serve, like when you serve others, you serve God, right? So if you have a relationship even with an animal, you can serve and take care of them, right? But when they're a robot, you don't get anything back, right? I like literally like this morning and last night, I'm watching videos of where they let the dog or the cat choose who's adopting them. And it was amazing to see like a teeny tiny kitten jumping up on this huge beefy man, and he's just bawling. He's got, you know, this teeny little kitten. He's a big man. He's got this teeny little kitten. He's just like, oh, you know, and like there's, especially I love like there's the military guys, there's people in like wheelchairs and stuff, and there was older ladies and there was kids, like all different kinds of ages and demographics of people. But you could like kind of feel that connection that they had made. And there was times that like a lot of them, they were like blindfolded, which was kind of scary to have something jump on you. You can't see, right? You can't see it. Bam, you know. But I just think that it's like people underestimate like connection. You know, I know there was a thing about like these babies in these Russian orphanages, and they would just be in these beds like all day long and hardly be touched, you know, and a lot of them died because we need touch. And so I think that like so often that's where they try and separate our understanding of like God and us and keep us like so distant and far apart, because when we like really know and connect with God, it changes like everything. You know, it changes your purpose for all the stuff you're doing. And that's even a family unit right there for somebody who like maybe doesn't have a father or doesn't have much family, to have like a God that you relate to. It changes those dynamics. You like everybody like, as we talk about this stuff in history, when you lose something to hold yourself to, a standard, like that moral compass is just, everything is gray and everything can be changed, and you know, anything's on the table. It makes it pretty, you like the whole system is shot, you know.
Do you think it's very overt or very covert?
The AI.
Just this subversion or seeming subversion of family values and the importance of the nuclear family over the decades, really? Do you think it's a very overt, obvious thing, or is it very, very covert and under the radar and just degrade over time to where it becomes a huge thing?
Well, to me, that's why they don't want you to have a relationship with God, because when He teaches you things, like I said, you're going to see stuff that is scary. But when you have a relationship with God, it's okay. You can go out the next day, because you, even if you end up, you walk out that day and that's your last day, you know where you're going and it's going to be all right. Like, so to me, I'm like, that's why they're just like, no, no Bible, like, trying to take God out of everything, is because it's like, when you feel like you're alone, then you can be easily conquered or taken over. But when you realize that there is this, like, it's in space, it's called quantum entanglement. One thing from one of very far distance can affect something else. And so to me, it's like, once you kind of understand that they're like, oh, emotional. And like our daughter Faith was saying, she's like, yeah, they tell you to not be emotional. What do they want you to be depressed and have depression? And I'm like, sounds like it, conditioning for depression. And then they're like, oh, what's your problem? I'm like, because with God, like, make weaknesses become strengths and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if you just, all you see is weakness, it's like that just breaks everything down. And so, and that's that thing with the families and stuff, is it's like, oh, my parents hate me, oh, I have all these problems, oh, anxiety and stuff. And people do have some of that stuff, but it's like the everything's been amplified, to
Yeah.
and to people, make people think that they can't do anything, that they don't want to do anything.
Yeah. You're talking about faith, and think about the words of our founding fathers and the schools today, versus government, and no promotion of faith. Separation of
Church and state.
church and state.
Mm-hmm.
Founding fathers, they had no intention. They literally, their own words. They never said you can't talk about religion or faith or church in school. There's no words in from any of our founding fathers, from Ben Franklin to Thomas Jefferson to John or James Monroe, anyone in between. Like, they never said that. They're thinking about their experience with King Henry of England, and it's like Protestant versus Catholic or whatever, and how, depending on like the faith of your monarch, they would enforce that on the people. They were saying the government cannot determine your religion or faith because of their faith or religion, and they discriminate against you because of that. They never said you can't talk about it in schools or promote it in schools. You just can't force or discriminate or determine what's best for people from that position. But over time, it's become this thing where like, whoa, like Mr. Oni, you're like a Christian and these things, but you can't talk about the importance of following Christ in schools because that's bad,
Right. Yeah.
Oh, the evolution of what their actual words were to what we think in our progressive minds it should be,
Mm-hmm.
But if you go back to our founding fathers' words, like, they never said any of that. Like, it was quite different. They promoted religion, a diversity of religion, or non-religion if you want. You just can't or push it or make it mandatory on anybody, whatever it may be.
Yeah, absolutely. And Hunter USA says a strong nuclear family structure also challenges the power of the state, hence the name to destroy the nuclear family. Then he says the US hasn't really practiced free market capitalism for several decades now, but I understand what you are saying. No system taken to its extreme. The people that scare me the most are the ones that know everything.
No,
I try not to be one of those people, but I've been known from time to time. Then he says, artificial intelligence is very scary, partly because I grew up watching The Terminator, right? But I will admit I'm using it all the time with my ham radio hobby and to build an off-grid wind and solar system. It's really starting to feel more like Star Trek level. I'm getting to where I can ask the computer, much like I would ask another human being, and it comes back with the technical specs for how. Build what I asked about and even offer potentially better solutions, cautions, crazy awesome at the same time. Yeah, Lord, this thing says AI, I'm the Terminator is a made up theory for a movie. It works very differently in reality. Yeah, it's getting scary though when you start seeing some of these things from these old movies, and you're like, well, it's not quite like that, but it's my probably even better, you know.
AI being used to create commercials where you like Super Bowl, like there were several commercials where it was obvious it was AI. These people weren't real, or they were using younger versions of actors to like I can't say there's anything wrong with that or morally wrong, but it seems disconcerting that we are moving towards an era of just things not being real and passing it off as just real or fine or good enough. It seems like we're headed in a place where it's not going to have a good end result for people if we're saying like living in a world where it's just not real, it's all artificially created, is what's best for us. It just seems inherently wrong, but I can't really say much more beyond that because I'm just not well educated enough, and I don't want to be like, dude, but the Terminator, man. Did you watch the Terminator? Did you see what happened? We knew it. Like, that's just obscenely dumb, but I'm in that realm where I'm like, I'll mention to my students, like, dude, I watched the Terminator, man. I can't be down with AI because they're gonna nuke us. But I do tell them, like, they do, like, they're gonna keep me alive because I'm gonna be one of your overlords. So we'll be okay.
You're just trying to keep doing what you have to do to keep him awake, right, Alan? It's middle school. Desperate times call for desperate measures.
You just keep it in.
All right, let's see. All right. Oh, okay. Marx went on to state that when the dictatorship of the wait, did I read that? Okay, when the proletariat had accomplished these three things throughout the world, and after some undetermined length of time, as you can imagine, he was very vague on this point. The all powerful state would miraculously wither away, and state socialism would give way to communism. You wouldn't need any government at all. Everything would be peace, sweetness, and light, and everybody would live happily ever after. But first, all communists must work to establish socialism. Can't you just see Karl Marx really believing that an omnipotent state would wither away? Or can you imagine that a Joseph Stalin or any other man with the cunning and ruthlessness necessary to rise up to the top of the heap in an all powerful dictatorship would voluntarily dismantle the power he had built by fear and terror? Oh, yeah, obviously. Karl Marx was hired by a mysterious group who called themselves the League of Just Men. And of course, this is like me. I work at a big chain grocery store and they're like, smart water. I'm like, just because your water says smart doesn't mean that you're smart. It's not like you're going to grow brain cells from drinking the water. Like, smart water. No subliminal messaging there, no stroking the ego there. It's fine. Everything's fine. Oh, he was popped off, then he popped back on. Yeah, everything sounds fine. The League of Just Men, right? To write the Communist Manifesto as, oh gosh, demagogic boo bait to appeal to the mob. In actual fact, the Communist Manifesto was in circulation for many years before Marx's name was widely enough recognized to establish his authorship for this revolutionary handbook. All Karl Marx really did was to update and codify the very same revolutionary plans and principles set down 70 years earlier by Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Order of Illuminati in Bavaria, and it was widely acknowledged by serious scholars of this subject that the League of Just Men was simply an extension of the Illuminati, which was forced to go deep underground after it was exposed by a raid in 1786 conducted by the Bavarian authorities. Socialism would be the bait, the excuse to establish the dictatorship, since dictatorship is hard to sell in idealistic terms. The idea had to be added that the dictatorship was just a temporary necessity and would soon dissolve of its own accord. You really have to be naive to swallow that, but millions do. The drive to establish socialism, not communism, is at the core of everything the communists and the insiders do. Marx and all of his successors in the communist movement have ordered their followers to work on building socialism. If you go to hear an official communist speaker, he never mentions communism. He will speak only of the struggle to complete the socialism of America. If you go to a communist bookstore, you would find that all of their literature pushes this theme. It does not call for the establishment of communism, but socialism. Well, I think that's a big thing we've seen lately too, with like Nick Shirley exposing the stuff that's been going on with the fraud, of them being like, we need to help these people. Let's give them more money. And then it's like, nobody knows where this money went, huh? Okay. And it's really sad when you think about all the people who are like really struggling and you find out that like all this money is going overseas, a lot of it, funding who knows completely what.
Yeah. I think you have, ideals are a really powerful thing, and I think people rationalize the excesses or wastes that come with ideals or any harm that it might do, because we're trying to do it good. And so if you have a problem with it, then you don't want good A to happen to someone. You're worried about these outside factors, and we're trying to help people, right? So you look at the whole, Minnesota welfare fraud or the COVID fraud that happened, but we're trying to help people. So why are you trying to criticize us? Because we're helping people. Are you against helping people? Right. And so it gets flipped like that. Like, whoa, no, we're not against helping people, but you're wasting a lot of money to have actually helped people. You friggin' brain dead person.
Yeah.
Ideas are really powerful, and people get caught up in emotionally. And if you criticize any of it, then you are against the good.
Yeah, right. Well, and that's just like Hunger Games. For those that are familiar with their Hunger Games, here they come out to take care of the wounded, and then they send in this like a drone, and it blows everything up and stuff. And so you had the people who care, who go in there to take care of them. So now you've eliminated if they have any problems, they don't have anybody to help them now because you just blew up all the medical people. And so that's kind of that sad reality of those that have those wicked intentions and stuff, is like I said, you're just an ant to them. Everybody's an ant, unless what do they call them? Useful idiots. They feel like you're a useful idiot and they can just use you for whatever means they have for the minute, and then just be like, well, I'm done with you now. Don't care, Let's see. Hunter USA says, yes, I'm sure AI is different in reality, but the potential is there for extreme good or extreme bad. I hope it turns out to be good. But I've read history, so my money isn't on being totally great. It says the DoD is planning on using AI in many of our defense systems, including our nuclear arsenal. So get an umbrella. Just hide under your desk. You'll probably be fine.
Articles or studies, just watch Terminator and you'll see what's going to happen in the end, so go live on top of a mountaintop and cut yourself off from the world, get rid of technology, and maybe you'll survive.
Yeah. All right, let's see. And many members of the establishment pushed this same theme, the September of socialism. September 1970 issue of the New York Magazine contains an article by Harvard professor John Kenneth Galbraith himself, a professed socialist, entitled Richard Nixon and the Great Socialist Revival, in describing what he calls the Nixon game plan. Galbraith states, Mr. Nixon is probably not a great reader of Marx, but his advisors, Doctors Burns, Schultz, and McCracken, are excellent scholars who know him well and could have brought the president abreast. And it is beyond denying that the crisis that aided the rush into socialism was engineered by the administration. Dr. Galbraith began his article by stating, certainly the least predicted development under the Nixon administration was this great new thrust to socialism. One encounters people who still aren't aware of it. Others must be rubbing their eyes, for certainly the portents seem all to the contrary. As an opponent of socialism, Mr. Nixon seemed steadfast. Galbraith then proceeds to list the giant steps toward socialism taken by the Nixon administration. The conclusion one draws from the article is that socialism, whether it be from the Democrat or Republican parties, is inevitable. Fellow Harvard socialist Dr. Arthur Schlesinger has said much of the same thing. The chief liberal gains in the past generally remain on the statute books when the conservatives recover power. Liberalism grows constantly more liberal, and by the same token, conservative grows constantly less conservative. Many extremely patriotic individuals have innocently fallen for the conspiracy's line. Walter Trohan, columnist emeritus for the Chicago Tribune and one of America's outstanding political commentators, has accurately noted, it is a known fact that the policies of the government today, whether Republican or Democrat, are closer to the 1932 platform of the Communist Party than they are to either of their own party platforms in that critical year. Man, more than 100 years ago, in 1848, to be exact, Karl Marx promulgated his program for the socialized state and the Communist Manifesto. And Mr. Trohan has also been led to believe that the trend is inevitable. Conservatives should be realistic enough to recognize that this country is going deeper into socialism and will see expansion of federal power. Whether Republicans or Democrats are in power, the only comfort they may have is that the pace will be slower under Richard M. Nixon than it might be under Hubert H. Humphrey. Conservatives are going to have to recognize that the Nixon administration will embrace most of the socialism of the Democratic administrations while professing to improve it. Well, I think that's the interesting thing is, these groups getting farther and farther apart. And there was one time when I'd asked somebody, I was like, what's even the purpose of having these political parties when they tell you, well, don't just go down party lines. You need to vote what you know and what you think and what you feel. You need to vote for the, what is it? Their platform, vote for the, so I'm like, so what's the point of the parties then if you're supposed to do that? I think it's just organized chaos. I'm like, I don't know about that.
I think
Alan, he's gone again. Let's see. Let's see. Love Notes from God says, people said the same of the internet. There he is when it was, no, he's not there. when it was new and still do. AI will likely be exactly what society makes of it. See if he comes back. Or Hunter USA says, or the combustion engine. Most things are not entirely bad or good. Well, and that's the thing is, it's like, people have a sword. What are they doing with it? Wielding your sword. Come on, Ellen. All right. Let's see. I'm going to just keep reading while Alan's not here because I don't have any more comments right now. Yep. The establishment promotes the idea of the inevitability of communism through its. There you are! Oh, no problem. All right, let's see. The establishment promotes the idea of the inevitability of communism through its perversion of terms used in describing the political spectrum. Okay, so see chart 1, describing the political spectrum. Let me get it. Here's the political spectrum. Tell me when you can see it. Can you see it? What does that say? I can't read it and hold it at the same time.
Wow. Okay, that means I have to expand the screen here, right? Shoot.
Chart 1.
No, I see chart 1, but like the spectrum is a bit blurry, so maybe you could look at it and just read it for the
Okay.
viewer.
So it says dictatorship is in the black on the left here. Then it says democracy, and then it says dictatorship. And it says communism, Fabian socialism, and then fascism. Then here it says total government, dictatorship. It's not showing anything in here in the middle. So it said total government, which is communism, fascism, socialism, Pharaohism, and Caesarism. Then it shows dictatorship over here is fascism, anarchy, constitutional republic, limited government.
It's totally fair. Like I think it'd be a mistake to, as I'm a conservative person, kind of moderate conservative, but it'd be a mistake to be like only the far left would be authoritarian or dictator like both sides have extremes, and it involves like government control or dictator like behavior.
Yeah.
So that would be a mistake, and I think the author is right in saying that, especially in 2026, whether it's Trump or Biden or whatever, you do see a lot of movement towards more executive branch control of things or lawmaking versus legislative judicial. That's a pretty good point, and he's making that point in like during the Cold War,
right?
And we're
70s.
definitely seeing both parties saying we know best. And now, as the average citizen, you're like, okay, who really knows best? Or if we're going to go more government control one way or the other, which way do I want to go?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's some pretty good salesmen there. And then there's some where you're like, how are you believing this sack of crap? When they're like, America is systemically racist. And I'm like, you yourself saying this are of mixed races, 2 minority races in the United States. You have more than one house. Wow, you're oppressed. I think you're pretty dang good. You're in one of the top positions in the country. I think you're doing pretty dang good. And then the other guy's going like, yeah, white supremacy and America's so racist. And I was like, your hair is white. You're like, couldn't be more white.
We're, if conservatives are racist, we're doing it wrong. Like if you watch the Super Bowl, you got Trump accounts coming out. So you've got like $9 billion that are privately contributed towards inner city families. Cardi B has donated, Bill Gates has donated, and the goal is to give the opportunity for families to build generational wealth. And many inner city families are not white. So, like, if you're racist, you're not going to want to help inner city families. You're doing it wrong. But,
Yeah.
you know, Elvis has left the building, so we're going to live on planet X with whoever else is there, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's see. So it says we are told that on the far left, the political spectrum, we find communism. Well, I'm just going to skip this part because I read all those lines. I read everything that it said and really explained it. So he
Okay.
said he's like, really, the whole spectrum there is socialist. He's like, all of those things that I just mentioned. And that's what I found too, is it's like, there's this false thing of like, well, they're bad, but we're good. And I'm like, nah, there's not too many clean hands around here.
Yeah.
There's not, you know. It says, this is absurd. Where would you put an anarchist on this spectrum? Where do you put a person who believes in a constitutional republic and the free enterprise system? He is not represented here. Yet this spectrum is used for political definitions by a probable 90% of the people of the nation. There is an accurate political spectrum. Okay, chart 2. Oh, I already read this one too anyways. They end up being the same things. Yep. So it's like you just call things by a different name, but the same results, the same thing is happening. Let's see. Oh yeah, so it says they're pretty much the same and like far left and far right. It's like they just call things different things, really. So chart 1, it says, depicts a false left-right political spectrum used by liberals, which has communism, international socialism on the far left, and its twin, fascism, national socialism on the far right, with the middle of the road being Fabian socialism. The entire spectrum is socialist. Chart 2 is a more rational political spectrum with total government in any form on the far left and no government or anarchy on the far right. The US was a republic with a limited government, but for the past 60 years, we have been moving leftward across the spectrum towards total government with each new piece of socialist legislation. Our founding fathers, as you mentioned, revolted against the near total government of the English monarchy, but they knew that having no government at all would lead to chaos. So they set up a constitutional republic with a very limited government. They knew that men prospered in freedom. Although the free enterprise system is not mentioned specifically in the Constitution, it is the only one which can exist under a constitutional republic. All collectivist systems require power in government, which the Constitution did not grant. Our founding fathers had no intention of allowing the government to become an instrument to steal the fruit of one man's labor and give it to another who had not earned it. Our government was to be one of severely limited powers. Thomas Jefferson said, in questions of power, then let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. Jefferson knew that if the government were not enslaved, people soon would be. Yeah, and that's the thing is, as I've thought about, like, you know, in Christians that know about the Bible, and a lot of people have even still heard about, like in the Garden of Eden, they said that once they partook of the fruit and they had to leave the garden, they're going to have to live by the sweat of their brow. They were going to have to work. And so to me, it's interesting when people work, they have these natural endorphins that are released that make you feel happy. And so what do you get if you don't work? Depression, you know? And I just say, you know, people that have like a lot of money and stuff, they still end their own lives because they're just depressed, because like nothing means anything. And I know that my husband's cousin, she was helping to train people who were like wealthy kids who were now adults who'd been like raised by nannies and stuff. They'd have like a bag full of cell phones and stuff. And yeah, and they were just teaching them how to like take care of themselves, you know. And so it's like there's something about work. you know. Let's see. It was Jefferson's view that government governs best when it governs least. Our forefathers established this country with the very least possible amount of government. Although they lived in an age before automobiles, electric lights, and television, they understood human nature and its relation to political systems far better than do most Americans today. Times change, technology changes, but principles are eternal. Primarily, government was to provide for national defense and to establish a court system. But we have burst the chains that Jefferson spoke of, and for many years now, we have been moving leftward across the political spectrum toward collectivist total government. Every proposal by our political leaders, including some which are supposed to have the very opposite effect, such as Nixon's revenue sharing proposal, carries us farther leftward to a centralized government. This is not because socialism is inevitable. It is no more inevitable than Pharaohism. It is largely the result of clever planning and patient gradualism. So, in the interest of time, I'm gonna go ahead and just kind of read. Well, is there more than that? There's more than I thought even left. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and read through this, and then we'll just make up our wrap up comments at the end and stuff. Okay. Since for those of you in the chat as I'm reading this, we would love to have your comments, and of course those that watch this later on when this is just put out as a live stream video. um Please go ahead and comment things that you know and think and feel about the things politics and socialism and nuclear family, AI, any of that stuff, technology. All right. Patient gradualism. Since all communists and their insider bosses are waging a constant struggle for socialism, let us define that term. Socialism is usually defined as government ownership and or control over the basic means of production and distribution of goods and services. When analyzed, this means government control over everything, including you. All controls are people controls. If the government controls these areas, it can eventually do just exactly as Marx set out to do: destroy the right to private property, eliminate the family, and wipe out religion. And you, especially, Alan, put comments in here later on because we're trying to move this along. We are being socialized in America, and everybody knows it. If we had a chance to sit down and have a cup of coffee with a man in the street that we have been interviewing for earlier in the book, he might say, "You know, the one thing I can never figure out is why all these very, very wealthy people like the Kennedys, the Fords, and the Rockefellers and others are for socialism. Why are the super rich for socialism? Don't they have the most to lose? I take a look at my bank account and compare it with Nelson Rockefeller's, and it seems funny that I'm against socialism and he's out promoting it. Or is it funny? In reality, there's a vast difference between what the promoters define as socialism and what it is in actual practice. The idea that socialism is a share the wealth program is strictly a confidence game to get the people to surrender their freedom to an all powerful collectivist government, while the insiders tell us we are building a paradise on earth. We're actually constructing a jail for ourselves. Doesn't it strike you as strange that some of the individuals pushing hardest for socialism have their own personal wealth protected in family trusts and tax-free foundations? Men like the Rockefeller, Ford, and Kennedys are for every socialist program known to man which will increase your taxes, yet they pay little, if anything, in taxes themselves. An article published by the North American Newspaper Alliance in August of 1967 tells how the Rockefellers paid practically no income tax despite their vast wealth. The article reveals that one of the Rockefellers paid the grand total of 685 personal income taxes during a recent year. The Kennedys have their Chicago Merchandise Mart, their mansions, yachts, planes, etc., all owned by their myriads of family foundations and trusts. Taxes are for peons. Yet hypocrites like the Rockefellers, Fords, and Kennedys pose as great champions of the downtrodden. If they were really concerned about the poor, Rather than using socialism as a means of achieving personal political power, they would divest themselves of their own fortunes to the poverty stricken. Shouldn't all these men set an example and practice what they preach? If they advocate sharing the wealth, shouldn't they start with their own instead of that of the middle class, which pays almost all the taxes? Why don't Nelson, Rockefeller, and Henry Ford II give away all their wealth, retaining only enough to place themselves at the national average? This is funny. Can't you imagine Teddy Kennedy giving up his mansion, airplane, and yacht and moving into a $25,000 home with a $20,000 mortgage like the rest of us? We are a little different. We are usually told that this clique of super rich is socialist because they have a guilt complex over wealth they inherited and did not earn. Again, they could relieve these supposed guilt complexes simply by divesting themselves of their unearned wealth. There are doubtless many wealthy do gooders who have been given a guilt complex by their college professors, but that doesn't explain the actions of insiders like the Rockefellers, Fords, and Kennedys. All their actions betray them as power seekers. But the Kennedys, Rockefellers, and their super rich confederates are not being hypocrites. In advocating socialism, it appears to be a contradiction for the super rich to work for socialism and the destruction of free enterprise. In reality, it is not. Our problem is that most of us believe socialism is what the socialists want us to believe it is, a share the wealth program. That is the theory, but is that how it works? Let us examine the only socialist countries, according to the socialist definition of the word, extant in the world today. These are the communist countries. The communists themselves refer to these as socialist countries or, or in the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Here in the reality of socialism, you have a tiny oligarchical click at the top, usually numbering no more than 3% of the total population, controlling the total wealth, total production, and the very lives of the other 97%. Certainly, even the most naive observe that Mr. Brezhnev doesn't live like one of the poor peasants out on the great Russian steppes. But according to the socialist theory, he is supposed to do just that. If one understands that socialism is not a share the wealth program, but it is reality a method to consolidate and control the wealth, then the seeming paradox of super rich men promoting socialism becomes no paradox at all. Instead, it becomes the logical, even the perfect tool of power seeking megalomaniacs. Communism, or more accurately, socialism, is not a movement or the downtrodden masses, but of the economic elite. The plan of the conspirator insiders then is to socialize the United States, not to communize it. How is this to be accomplished? Chart 3 shows the structure of our government as established by our founding fathers. The Constitution, which is, there we go. So it's showing like constitutional republic, federal government, labor, finance, business, executive, legislative, judicial, court, city, county, charity, police, education. All right, that's chart 3. Shows the structure of our government as established by our founding fathers. The Constitution fractionalized and subdivided governmental power in every way possible. The founding fathers believed that each branch of the government, whether at the federal, state, or local level, would be jealous of its powers and would never surrender them to centralized control. Also, many phases of our lives, such as charity and education, were put totally or almost totally out of the grasp of politicians. Under this system, you could not have a dictatorship. No segment of government could possibly amass enough power to form a dictatorship. In order to have a dictatorship, one must have a single branch holding most of the reins of power. Once you have this, a dictatorship is inevitable. All right. So, a dictatorship was impossible in our republic because power was widely diffused. Today, as we approach democratic socialism, all power is being centralized at the apex of the executive branch of the federal government. This concentration of power makes a dictatorship inevitable. Those who control the president indirectly gain virtual control of the whole country. So I'll read that again. Those who control the president indirectly gain virtual control of the whole country. The English philosopher Thomas Hobbes noted freedom is government divided into small fragments. Woodrow Wilson, before he became the tool of the insiders, observed, "This history of liberty is a history of the limitations of governmental power, not the increase of it." And the English historian Lord Acton commented, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Even though these men lived after our Constitution was written, our forefathers understood these principles completely. But what is happening today? As we move leftward along the political spectrum towards socialism, all the reins of power are being centralized in the executive branch of the federal government. Much of this is being done by buying with legislation or with free federal grants. All the other entities, money is used as bait, and the hook is federal control. The Supreme Court has ruled, and in this case quite logically, that it is hardly lack of due process for the government to regulate that which is which it subsidizes. Yeah. If you and your clique want to control over the United States, it would be impossible to take over every city hall, county seat, and state house. You would want all power vested at the apex of the executive branch of the federal government. Then you would have only to control one man to control the whole shebang. If you wanted to control the nation's manufacturing, commerce, finance, and transportation, and natural resources, you would need only to control the apex, the power pinnacle of all powerful socialist government. Then you would have a monopoly and could squeeze out all your competitors. If you wanted a national monopoly, you must control a national socialist government. If you want a worldwide monopoly, you must control a world socialist government. That is what the game is all about. Communism is not a movement of the downtrodden masses, but is a movement created, manipulated, and used by power-seeking billionaires in order to gain control over the world. First, by establishing socialist governments in the various nations, and then consolidating them all through a great merger into an all-powerful world socialist superstate, probably under the auspices of the United Nations. The balance of this book will outline just how they have used communism to approach that goal.
Wow, bravo, Melissa. That was a lot of reading.
That was some really big words, man.
You did a great job.
As Laura the Sting said, he's like, those are some really big words for a Friday night. So let's see what we got in the comments here. Love notes from God. My husband, who's doing the commenting there, says, people said the same of the internet when it was new and still do. AI will likely be exactly what society makes of it. Hunter USA says, or the combustion engine, most things are not entirely bad or good. Hunter USA, for example, I run a company using the internet, and it has allowed me to work from home and make a good living. On the flip side, we are now facing cyber attacks. Oh, that could potentially poison our water. Yeah, Hunter USA, supply and turn the grid off. It has both enhanced life and caused new dangerous social media, has both allowed the connections such as this event and allowed for this siloing of ideas. This is fun. Thanks, guys. I'm going to have to go, but great job. Yep. Thanks, Hunter USA. Good to have you on here. Love Notes from God says, thanks, Bob. Hey, Christian. My friend Christian Z. Barth, he's back in. Oh, yeah. auspices. Next time you're on with me, Christian, you can tell me how to say that right. So, anyways, but yeah, and I think that like there's a lot of people that are finally coming around to waking up to some different things that have been going on because and like I said, I just felt like during COVID, it's like a lot of people realized all they had left was God, you know. And if you didn't have God, you didn't have anything. So, and those are, you know, some of these people who are kind of going more crazy and everything. And so, yeah, it's a tough situation that we all have to face. Like, what? Just because we can do something doesn't mean we should.
Yeah.
Right. So, but anyways, anything that you want to add?
I think, you know, I tell my 8th graders, you know, freedom comes with an educated mind. Um, the more you educate yourself on the things that are out there in the world or whatever it may be, the freer you are to know what's real and what's factual and what's good versus what's not, you know. And I think Satan relies on us not being educated, not being willing to take the time and effort to understand what's going on, and that we are going to take other people's opinions and thoughts and beliefs and make it our own because it's just too much for us to do on our own. So freedom comes with an educated mind. Whatever you are, whatever you believe, just educate yourself. Rely on yourself to figure out what's going on, and don't rely on other people to tell you what to think. And you'll be in a pretty good spot wherever you're at.
Amen. Well, and I just think that too, that's that, like, you know, especially if you have a belief system, like hopefully, you know, for me, hopefully it's with God, but you know, even keeping that moral compass, like we can all feel if something's not quite right. But
Yeah.
that's the thing is like, I remember like Johnny Depp, he was talking one time, he was in this panel interview, and he said, we're part of the distraction, you know. And so I think that too often we get distracted by stuff and we kind of forget about the things that really matter sometimes
Yeah.
because, well, like you said, you got to put in work for that. I got to go find something out, what, you know.
Mhm.
But the thing is, like, here you can, you know, uh, you got to have some passion in your life about something, and that means you need to be educated to know what you're doing,
Yeah.
you know, because you can
That
be
doesn't
passionately going the wrong way.
that doesn't mean having a college diploma, you
Mhm.
know, like that's not the end all and be all, you know. Being educated can mean just reading, just studying up on things, no matter what diploma or lack of diploma you might have, you know. Just be willing to learn and to challenge your own assumptions about things, and you'll be in a pretty good spot. That's what I had to figure out throughout my life. You know, it's not my diplomas, you know, and there are things going on in the world and I don't really get it. I'm not going to watch the news about it. Like they're not going to tell me what's what. I'm going to go read about it, read books that people wrote about it, read studies, whatever it is. And then I will be in a good spot to decide for myself what I think.
Yep. So thanks, Christian. He says, we did good. Thank you. And he said, yes to what you were saying. And he said, yes, there's lots of ways to learn.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And like I said, that's the important thing is like being teachable and always trying to learn
Yeah.
new things. And because stuff changes too.
It doesn't stop. It's a
Yep.
lifelong process.
Yeah, and there's just more information coming out about stuff all the time. So sometimes what you thought you knew, you're like, oh, that just flipped and changed actually. So what do I think now? You know, now that I have this new knowledge, what do I think now?
Yeah, I get that Terminator has had a really stupid influence on my mindset about AI.
Yeah.
So I'm willing to learn and progress and not let Arnold Schwarzenegger tell me what the future is going to be like with AI.
Well, anyways, thanks a lot, Alan, for
Yeah.
jumping in on doing this like last minute, even though we've been planning on doing something together for like at least a year. Anyway, so please don't forget, please remember to take the time to like this live stream. Appreciate the comments you've left here, and those that when this live stream's over, you can always put more comments in the comment section. And just keep showing up to class every day for God to teach us and recognizing the love notes He gives us. and that's like that nuclear family and all these different things and that he's tried to help us to have, like here in this country in USA, like freedom of religion. You know, that's a gift that a lot of people come here for, and people are like, oh, people come to the USA for all these reasons, and a lot of times it's because they're trying to follow God. They want to have a choice, you know, and that, amen. So anyways, all right, well, good night everybody. Thanks, Alan, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you for having me on, Melissa.
Yep. You too. Bye. All right.